When you hear the word coding, what does it mean to you? Well, it's probably something far away for you, like something you feel is too complicated to get into, or learn, or even understand, which may feel like a shame considering people around the world are getting into the swing of computer programming, and even computers in general. Varied workplaces, from hospitals to department stores to even police stations, are looking for bright, tech-savvy workers with a high knowledge of computers. But how can you get into it? There is no doubt the late 20th and current 21st centuries have some of the most pivotal and extreme turning points. While not all of them positive, they all have sparked something in a way that wouldn't have happened without it. So, why Python? Well, while an obscure thing it is, why is it so important? Well, let's take a look at this image of JavaScript code for a bit, shall we? Let's see here. What? All this just to say hello world? Does it really need to be that hard to code? Meanwhile, let's see how to write the same message in Python. Well, that's very simple to type and understand. Considering the word print is used to put things from a computer on paper, it isn't that hard to read and realize. Oh, print means to print text to the screen. Unlike other coding languages that aren't really easy to process quickly. Additionally, considering Python uses abbreviations of words in English, one of the world's most popular languages, it's understandable why people are so attracted to it. But let's take a step back from that, and why don't we discuss?
My first job was on a team that worked on a programming language named ABC, and it was a super interesting project, and everything I know about language design originate in that project.
Off during Christmas, it's a wonder how far hobbies can take you. But how far did this one take us? Well, first, let's talk about the goal of Python at its core. Python is a language that is meant to be intuitive, yet just as capable as other programming languages. It is meant to be easy to read, understand, learn, interact with, and be suitable for things we need daily. But that's pretty hard to achieve, so let's backtrack a bit, shall we? To get to the beginning, we need to go back to the Netherlands during 1982. Van Rossum was working for a company called the WCI and was working on a programming language published by the company to be called the ABC programming language, with the exact same goals as Python. Unfortunately, while this language in particular wasn't successful, it was the first and biggest inspiration to get Van Rossum to start working on Python in his free time. As Python became further and further into fruition, Van Rossum decided to write one of the first web browsers using Python, Grail. But before we talk about Python's effects in the world, let's discuss what a programming language is. It's not really a language in the sense that it has unique words or unique characters. No, they all use the English language. So then how are they different? Well, for starters, let's discuss the purpose of programming languages, or just coding. You see, a computer isn't a super smart AI using genius, or at least not yet. Computers are incredibly capable processors that carry out tasks that humans can't do, and with pinpoint accuracy. However, it doesn't do the super cool mind-blowing stuff unless you tell it to. And the worst part, you can't just type, "Hey, computer, do this thing for me." No, you have to type it in a way that the computer understands. So what is the result? Well, coding. Coding isn't a creation, by the way. Coding isn't you taking things out of thin air and making them into being on a screen. Instead, coding is actually more like an incredibly specific set of instructions to make the computer do what you want it to. Notably, this means a computer can't actually do anything unless a human codes it. But the problem comes when you realize that computers are progressing at a rate we've never seen before in anything else. And people who are in their 20s at the very least most likely didn't grow up with a computer, let alone at home or in school. But these people are as important to society as the new age people, like us. So they're going to need to learn to code. But that isn't always possible. I'll go more in depth with this later, but let's just say that with Python, it is. While Python did go under the radar for a while, it started ramping up in popularity in the 2000s. And when I say ramp, I mean literally ramp. I mean, look at this image from the Ngram viewer on Google, which shows how many people are searching Python. And let's just say that it got pretty popular. Just look at the size of that increase. In under 2 decades, the search word Python saw an approximate 800% increase in the search bar. Crazy, huh? It doesn't even stop there. As Python continues its relevance journey, it's growing increasingly more and more popular. Just take a look at this image from Statista, a website with a data graph showing how many people are learning Python. And as shown in the image, it's the 3rd most popular programming language. Whoa, for such humble beginnings and an inexperienced audience, it's pretty high up. But you get my point in why I believe Python was such an important turning point in computers? That inexperienced audience I just mentioned made up enough people yearning to code to the point that it got up to 3rd on the popularity list. Could you imagine if Python never existed? Those people might have never gotten into coding just because every available language was just too difficult for them. So remember earlier when I said this? But that isn't always possible. I'll go more in depth with this later, but let's just say that with Python, it is. Imagine you're the average person and you don't have much free time. You might never learn to code because it just takes way too much time that you don't have. This also means you have a hugely important skill not under your belt. With how important computerizing is in this century, you'd be way far behind. But thankfully, that isn't the case, thanks to Van Rossum. But let's get back on the popularity train. Another source, the TIOBE Index, a super popular community place for coders, looks at the popularity of different coding languages monthly and yearly. In this image, we can see that Python won Language of the Year 5 times, and its highest position since 2001 is today. Right as you are watching this, Python is at an all-time high. And the best part, some popular games that maybe even you play use Python as well. Mainstream hits like Battlefield 2 and Sims 4 use Python as the main framework. But let's take another step back and investigate worldwide changes with Python. So, how did the world change? Well, let's take a look at some ways, according to Leftronic, the world, or at least the coding landscape, changed with Python. If you're still doubtful about the relevance of Python, these statistics are totally going to change your mind. So let's get reading. Well, firstly, in 2015, more primary school students sought to learn Python than students who sought to learn French, with a whopping 6 of 10 students wanting to learn Python. Additionally, the majority of Python users are aged between 21 to 29 years, which proves my point of the fact that learning Python is helpful for people without much time. 4 out of 5 developers' main language for coding is Python, and 56% of those people work independently on their projects. In 2019, Python was the 2nd most searched programming language on Google, as well as being more searched than Kim Kardashian and Donald Trump, who was president at the time. There are approximately 23 million Python downloads on Windows alone, and the number of Python developers outnumber Java developers, another extremely popular programming language. Python developers can earn a salary of up to $118,000, and it is also one of the primary languages used in Google in general. It doesn't even stop there though. Most of the apps you use on a daily basis run on Python. According to a company that helps new developers with Python, Django Stars, hits like Instagram, Spotify, Uber, and even are all made with Python. Phew, that was a lot. Who knew how important Python is? So, I guess that's it. We've gone on a historical turning point journey, and found out some very cool things. I bet though, that while you were watching this, you were wondering how you can learn Python as well. There are a lot of cool websites where you can learn Python, like Team Treehouse. I personally use that one, and it works great. In the end, there's only so much we can contribute, but every time we move forward a step, the more we can contribute. And the easier the steps, the faster we get to our goal.